What is up, everybody? Scratch coming up with another Raid Shadow Legends video. In this video we're gonna talk about top best epics in the entire game. Mainly like the epics that I have zero regrets for taking at 60, and they're great all around the game rather than in just one particular area of the game. So I have zero regrets for taking these champions at 60 in the endgame, guys. Overall, they're amazing champions. Lots of fun to play with, and we know it. We have so many epic champions, and it's so hard to actually rank champions, right? Especially the epic ones, considering that we have so many. So I'm gonna start slowly, mainly with kind of some of them that are my favorites. I'm not gonna lie. The first one that I'm gonna name you right now, guys, is Seer. Okay. So since the new stages drop with the dungeons, I think she's one of the most wanted epic champion in the entire game, next to ManEater. Like, both of them, they're super great epic champions. One is for clan boss, one is for dungeons, but I feel like Seer, she became even more powerful after the new dungeons dropped out the stages. So what's so special about Seer, guys? I'm sure a lot of you guys are familiar with it, but we're not only gonna talk what the champion can do, I'm gonna tell you how to build the champions to get the most out of the champions. You know, we're never really ranking champions top 1, top 2, top 3, because it's very situational, depends by what other champions you have on your account, depends by the gear you have, etc, etc, and I can just find you another 100 reasons why it's not good to rank champions by 1, 2, 3, etc. But this champion right here is very unique in terms of this skill. So, removes all buffs from all allies and enemies, then attacks all enemies. Damage increases according to the number of removed buffs. Has a 50% chance of placing a sleep debuff on all enemies for 1 turn. The chance of placing a sleep debuff increases by 5 for each buff removed. Inflicts less damage to bosses. So, long time ago this champion was really bad. Like, I can't really think of a champion to put it at the same level. She was completely trash. Then they buffed her. She was busted. She was one-shotting the spider with this skill, and then they modified a bit the skill, and they decreased the amount of damage she can deal from here. So this champion, guys, does not require attack, okay? She does require to have 100% crit rate. It doesn't work with 70 crit rate when you put a crit rate buff on her, because she removes buffs. So she's gonna deal damage after she removes the buff, so that will leave you with 70 crit rate. So that's one thing to keep in mind. She needs 100% crit rate. She doesn't need attack. You do need to give her some amount of accuracy depending by what exactly you're fighting against, you know. And yeah, you can give her HP, you can give her defense, you can give her whatever you want, but no need for attack. Attack is good on her only on the A1, okay? The A1 attacks one enemy, 20% chance to grant an extra turn. The A2 places a 30% increased crit rate on all allies for 2 turns, and a weakened debuff on all enemies for 2 turns. If she doesn't have enough buffs to eat them, to say like this, she's gonna start with the A2 rather than the A3. So the way to make her go straight into the A3, even though we have the AI fixture now, is to have enough buffs. So the more buffs she has, and the more buffs the enemy team has, the more damage she's gonna do. Yeah, Savage set can be pretty good on Seer, of course, but it's not a necessity. What matters the most is the amount of buffs and to have weakened the defense down on the enemy team. But that's Seer right here, guys. Probably my most favorite epic together with Madame series. Both of them crazy good champions. I am running her in Doom Tower, dungeons, pretty much everywhere except Spider, and Madame series arena, like crazy. But another epic champion that I want to give a shout out from here is Sandlashed Survivor. I'm gonna kind of put her at the same level with Godseeker, Aniri, very similar champions. Slightly different utility overall, but they're both kind of doing the same thing for clan boss. Both have different utility for arena. She has a unique passive. This is kind of like the main thing that deserves a shout out on her. Places a 50% ally protection buff on all allies for 2 turns when an ally HP drops below 50%. Also places a block damage buff on this champion for 1 turn. So she's great to use on a go second team. Of course, she increases the duration of buffs on all the team, and the duration of and decreases the duration of all buffs on the enemy. Mainly you want her to run on a 2-to-1 ratio team, or just normal teams where you want to increase the duration of your buffs, counter attack, shield, She doesn't increase the duration of block damage or unkillable, guys. So that's one thing to keep in mind. She doesn't do that. She has a greater aura as well. Increases ally defense in all battles by 25%. Pretty good base stats for a champion. Defensive base, so yeah, give her tons of defense. She can deal pretty good damage. Provoke on the A1, good for the Magma Dragon, just as an idea. Overall, Sandlashed Survivor, pretty good champion. Another awesome champion from this faction is Duck the Pierced. Super awesome champion. He looks badass as well as a design, right? Like the shield is so nice, and the weapon just overall looks great as a champion. Crazy good base stats as well. Defense-based champion, right? Like look at that. Almost 16,000 HP, almost 1.4k defense. His A1 attacks one enemy 2 times. Each hit has a 40% chance to place a decreased accuracy debuff for 2 turns. His A2 attacks all enemies, 100% chance to land attack down, also 100% chance to land defense down on each critical hit. Build him with crit rate, right? Give him full crit rate, you're gonna have defense down AoE and attack down AoE. And he's gonna deal a bit of damage as well. Honestly, he's not dealing bad damage at all. His A3 places a provoke debuff for 1 turn on the target enemy. Also has a 75% chance of placing a provoke debuff for 1 turn on 2 random enemies. Places a 30% reflect damage buff on this champion for 2 turns and an unkillable buff on this champion for 2 turns. So he's gonna provoke, place unkillable on himself to make sure nobody can kill him. And on top of it, he's gonna have reflect damage to make sure the enemies, they're gonna take back some damage. His passive increases ally defense in faction creeps by 31%. Not the best aura overall, but is good for faction wars, right? So this champion right here is very similar with Stag Knight in a way or another, like considering the A2, defense down, attack down, AoE, they're kind of on the same level. But if would be to pick in between one of them, I would probably give a higher rating to this one just because of the provoke. It has the passive as well, and is just a bit more tanky in terms of defense, you know. And it looks a bit cooler. I find him a bit more badass looking than a Stag Knight, to say like this. But great champion, Duck the Pierced. I have one at 60 for faction wars. Definitely a great champion. Zargala deserves a shout out from here as well, guys. Rask, pretty good epic champion as well, but more situational. Jorg as well, they're more like faction wars. Same with Ultimate Gallic. Good for Spider if you have no other better options overall there. The next champions I want to talk about, moving over to High Elves. So we have Battle Sage decent, pretty good, not bad. Vergis, great for the Scarab King. Not so much utility all around the game, I would say, from Vergis, but he's not a bad champion at all, so I have zero regrets for building him, honestly. Tanasil, pretty decent. I feel like he kind of got power creeped. Tyrell, again, very good champion. I had one at 60 like for over 2 years now. Was the best attack down champion in the entire game before Alton got buffed. Defense aura, deals good damage. But again, I feel like he kind of got a bit power creeped as well. I don't regret for having one at 60. I would still suggest you to 6-star one if you get him. Tyrell for sure. Definitely a very strong champion. But my ultimate favorite from this faction is Royal Guard. And even though the new dungeon stages kind of killed him, till you get at that part, guys, I still feel like he's a great champion for all the stages up to stage 20. And probably not every single one of you guys is going to go and farm the higher stages. A lot of you will still stay on stage 20 for the energy consumption and things. So Royal Guard right here, AoE on the A2, enemy max HP, attacks all enemies, damage increases according to enemy max HP. He can deal tons and tons of damage, probably the third hardest hitting enemy max HP champion in the entire game when we're talking about bosses. Septimus being the first, Coldheart being second. His A3 attacks 4 times at random. Each hit has a 75% chance to decrease speed for 2 turns. Each hit also has a 75% chance to decrease the turn meter by 25%. He can actually deal pretty good damage with the A3 as well. Pretty good damage with the A1, and he has defense down for 2 turns with a 75% chance to land that. Increases ally attack in dungeons by 35%. Build him on Savage, build him on Cruel, build him on crit damage sets. Full crit rate or 75% depending on what affinity you're gonna use him. You are getting some extra crit rate on weak affinities. I think it's 15% or 25%. I kind of forgot that part because I'm not really relying on it that much. But mainly, this is a champion that you would want to put on Savage, on Cruel, crit damage sets to have good amount of crit damage. He doesn't really require attack, only for his A1 and A3. I know they say here damage based on attack, but it's not that true, honestly. Attack is barely making any sort of impact on the champion, on the damage he's gonna deal. Savage, Helm Smasher, the more crit damage you have, the more defense you ignore, the bigger the damage on this champion. But that's Royal Guard right here. Yeah, Tyrell, defense down AoE and a sleep, decreases turn meter and a stun. Ally defense in all battles, attacks one enemy 2 times, attack down. Pretty good base stats, right? For a defense-based champion. He can deal tons and tons of damage on clan boss, in dungeons, in arena. Just overall, he's not a bad champion at all, Tyrell. So, zero regrets for building him. I'm gonna be honest, I do feel a bit towards Battle Sage. I don't feel so excited anymore like before. She got really power creep, so right now there's so many other better champions than a Battle Sage out there. So, probably will not be the best decision to suggest you to still invest in a Battle Sage unless you have no other options at all. You really need her for Faction Wars, which is not really gonna help you for Faction Wars that much, but kind of up to you. Moving over to the next faction, we're just gonna go all in like a zigzag, you know, Barbarians, guys. Yes, we do have a decent amount of epic champions in here. Aina, good for clan boss. Atur, decent for the Magma Dragon. We have High Katun. We get her for free, not a bad champion. Vala, she's pretty decent as well. Suwai, decent. Now, the sisters are not that great. Skytouch Shaman, super great cleanser, one of the best cleansers in the entire game. Removes all debuffs from all allies, then places a revive on that buff and a block debuffs buff on all allies for 2 turns. So that's what I kind of say with Battle Sage. Skytouch Shaman is kind of putting Battle Sage to shame, to say like this. Then her passive damages this champion by 10% of their max HP at the start of each turn. Heals all allies except this champion equal to half of the lost HP. Places a 30% decreased speed debuff on this champion for 1 turn at the start of each turn. Also, this is the kind of the rip part, has a 50% chance to place a fear debuff on this champion for 1 turn. So, I strongly suggest you build her on immunity. The first 2 turns you're gonna avoid her to place a fear on a decreased speed on herself. To kind of Ripperoni herself, you know. So you want to have immunity. Then, if you want to make sure that that immunity doesn't get removed by Kymars, she's a great counter for Kymars, for champions that debuff the entire team, put sleep, CCs, you know. Not good for warlords. But if you want to make sure she still has the immunity up, she can still cleanse, you want to put her on immunity with high resistance, just as an idea. Having high HP on her is great for the heal she gives you back. Her aura increases ally HP in all battles by 25%. A1, AoE, so because she's AoE on the A1, she's not great on the Nether Spider. Attacks all enemies, heals by 15% of the damage inflicted if this champion has less than 50% HP. Boost this champion's turn meter by 20 instead if this champion has 50 HP or higher. Honestly, Skytouch Shaman, super powerful champion. I've been hyping this champion since day 1 and I still put my money on her. I still put my bet on Skytouch Shaman. That's how good she is. The next one, Shadekin the Fat, one of my favorite epics as well. Pretty good base stats for an attack champion, almost 1.1k defense. The HP is not that much, decent amount of attack. But this champion, guys, he makes everything. Honestly, A1, decreased defense for 2 turns. A2, HP burn and 2 poisons for 2 turns. A3, buffs crit rate, buffs crit damage on all allies for 3 turns. Then all allies except this champion will attack 1 target enemy. His passive deflects 20% of all incoming damage this champion receives onto all allies. The damage will be spread equally across all allies. This will actually make him survive much longer than you would expect on a high defense team in Clan Boss. If you guys saw the video with the Endless buff team that I've made a few days ago, we used the Shadekin the Fat. He was always the last champion to die. We had Krisk in there, we had Brago, we had Brogni. He was the last champion to die in the team because of this passive, guys. Shadekin the Fat, I feel like he's doing so much. Then, if I would have to 6-star him again, over and over, I would still do it over and over again. That's how good this champion I think he is, guys. Moving over to the next champions, factions, etc. Let's start with the Bannerlords. So here we have Archmage Helm. You actually get him from the Doom Tower. So he's a champion that you collect fragments with every single room you beat. He's an awesome champion. Pretty good base stats for a support champion. He hits much harder than you would actually expect him to hit. Crazy good damage. Now, it's not a necessity for you to build him as a damage dealer. You can use him as a buffer. Kind of that's the main idea with him. Increases ally speed in arena battles by 17%. I feel like his speed aura is pretty low. By the time you're gonna get him, you're gonna have a much better speed aura for arena. His passive, immune to turn meter decreasing effects, pretty good. It's very unique. I think it's the only passive that's like this in the game, but it doesn't really synergizes with the rest of his kit, honestly. Psychic places a 30% increased speed buff, a 30% increased crit rate buff, a 30% increased crit damage buff on all allies for 2 turns on a 3-turn cooldown, fully booked. Awesome skill. Great to pair him with a Seer, for example, because he gives up so many buffs. His A2 attacks one enemy. Also attacks all other enemies if the first attack is critical. The second hit has a 75% chance to place a stun debuff for 1 turn. After attacking, decreases the turn meter of each enemy without a stun debuff by 20%. So give him full crit rate, give him a bit of attack, give him a bit of crit damage, and I guarantee you, he's not gonna disappoint you. He's gonna be locking enemies with the stuns, decreasing turn meter, buffing your team, bringing up a bit of damage on the side as well, because if you really want to make the most out of his kit, I would strongly suggest you to have the right amount of crit rate in order for him to move it. So yes, you might use the A3 and have 70% crit rate and then move over to the A2, but I strongly suggest you try to get the higher amount of crit rate. A1 attacks one enemy, fills this champion's turn meter by 10%, fills the turn meter by 20% if this attack is critical. So again, he needs crit rate to make the most out of his kit, guys. But looking at his stats, it's not that hard to actually give him the crit rate and still keep him on a nice tanky build, decent amount of speed. He has 108 base speed and he does require accuracy for his A2. So overall, it's like squeezing a lot of stats on the champion to make the most out of it. Archmage, honestly, looks badass, and don't forget Shazam before you use him in order to make magic, right? That's kind of like the saying. What other champions we have great in here? So Stag Knight, how I said, very similar with Dag the Pierced, places a 50% increased accuracy buff on all allies for 1 turn each time the ally has a debuff resisted by an enemy. That's very unique passive right here, and it's the first champion that actually buffed accuracy. Crazy good base stats, pretty good speed, and he looks badass as well, Stag Knight, right? He was a battle pass champion. Yeah, I know, unfortunately, no more battle passes. Rip a Roni. A2, AoE defense down and attack down. 95% chance, so you need that 5% chance from masteries. That's why I kind of suggest you go on support tree all the way to Master Hexer and Sniper. Better masteries overall for him. A2 attacks one enemy 2 times. Each hit has a 50% chance to place a decreased speed for 2 turns. Great for the Spider, great for the Fire Knight, great for Faction Wars, decent for Arena as well, and as well this champion can deal some good amount of damage. So Stag Knight, if I'll have to 6-star another one over and over again, considering all the champions I have on my account, I would still do it with 0 regrets. He's still worth it, every single penny. Now, what other champions we have good in here? Chancellor Yasmin, decent. Gerhard, I never really use him, I just heard he hits hard, right? So I'm not gonna put my money on him. Rowan, decent poisoner now after the buff. Seneschal, decent leech. Hordin, good damage, right? Pretty fun champion. Knight Errant, pretty good damage. Warcaster, good for unkillable block damage teams. But probably I won't be like super excited to 6-star another one once I get a ManEater, you know? Ursala, super powerful champion. When we saw her kit, we were like, wow, this champion is gonna be my next god reviver for Arena. But then her base stats came out. And man, that defense kind of put us all off, and we were like, damn. But increases ally speed in Doom Tower battles by 24%. Very strong speed aura for Doom Tower, guys. She has decent base stats, except her defense is too low, speed is decent, and her HP is not as good, right? Considering that her defense is low as well. She was not meant for arena, that's one thing that I gotta say. Her revive skill is super powerful though. Revives all dead allies with 75% HP, then fills their turn meter by 50%. Also places a 60% increased defense and a 25% strengthen buff on all allies for 3 turns. On a 5-turn cooldown, this revive skill right here, guys, I feel like is probably the most unique, the most powerful revive skill in the entire game, just because it does so much. Defense up, 75% HP, 50% turn meter, and strengthen. Amazing champion. A2 attacks all enemies, 100% chance to place attack down. Also places a 50% increased attack buff on all allies for 2 turns. So she actually gives you attack up as well. And attack down if you decide to build her with accuracy. Her A1 attacks one enemy, has a 40% chance, 55 fully booked, to decrease the target's turn meter by 10. Now just because of this skill right here, I wouldn't bother with accuracy. I would just tank her and tank her and tank her more to make sure she survives. I would probably build her on a regeneration set for Doom Tower, dungeons. For arena, probably Swift Parry, considering how squishy she is. That's kind of what I have to tell you. Try to give her 300 plus resistance for dungeons and the rest of the content to make sure she doesn't get debuffed too much, because she's gonna be pretty squishy and it's gonna be pretty hard for you to tank her like crazy. Regeneration set to make sure she's continuously healing herself. Now that's kind of it with the Bannerlords. Moving over to the next faction, and we can start here with Sacred Order, right? Again, we have a bunch of decent champions in here. I like a lot Phoenix, deals a lot of damage, but he's not a necessity overall in endgame. Mordecai, great HP burn champion, super unique as well for an epic champion at least. Then we have Sanguinia, again she's decent, not blowing my mind off the roof. Eotar, decent poisoner as well. But then, like the top champions from here in my opinion, is Cardinal, because she's so unique. And I'm gonna explain you why. Inquisitor Shamael deals tons and tons of damage, but he's a single hitter, he has fear, so he's not a god tier champion, but he's not bad either. So probably I wouldn't regret to build another one. Deacon Armstrong, but let's start with Cardinal. So I'm not gonna go to the A2 and A1 because those are kind of meh. Her base stats are not amazing. But this skill right here revives all dead allies, heals them by 25% of their max HP, is not wow. And boosts their turn meter to max. So what does that mean, guys? It's not like they're gonna get full turn meter. No, they're gonna get full turn meter, like the max turn meter a champion can have in the game, whatever that is, 400% or whatever, I have no idea what it is. But it's gonna make sure that your champions that are gonna get revived, they're gonna go in front of the enemy team regardless how much speed they're gonna have. Regardless if they have 440 speed and full turn meter, whenever I revive with Cardinal, the champion that I revive immediately takes the turn. That's why she is so unique. There's no other champion in the entire game to do this. We have Raglin, we have Sifi, revives with full turn meter. Yeah, but revives with full turn meter at 200 speed, at 190 speed, at 250 speed, depending what speed your champions have. That's why this one right here is the most powerful revive skill in the entire game, because immediately the champions, they're gonna get revived, they're gonna take their turn. Cardinal, that's why she is so unique. Godseeker Aniri, very similar with Sandlashed Survivor on her main skill. Her A2 attacks all enemies, heals all allies by 15% of their max HP, then decreases the duration of all buffs on all enemies by 1 turn, and increases the duration of all buffs on all allies for 1 turn. So what's similar here? The increased duration of buffs and decrease the duration of buffs on the enemy team is exactly the same like Sandlashed Survivor AoE. Her A3 revives a dead ally with 50% HP, then fills their turn meter by 50 and resets the cooldown of all their skills. Her passive increases the amount of healing allies receive by 10%. If an ally is about to get killed by a fatal hit, preempts that hit and instantly places a revive on that buff on them for 1 turn before the damage is taken. That's great for arena, great for clan boss. Overall, she's very unique with this passive, and a lot of us tried her in many different places in the game. She hits hard as well. She's a defense-based champion. Her base defense is not that crazy, but trust me, if you build her for damage, she's gonna throw out tons of damage. You'll be well surprised to see what damage she can do. Her A1 attacks one enemy, heals the ally with the lowest HP by 5% of their max HP. Cannot heal this champion. So you can actually get heals with her. Depending on what other champions you use on the team, I feel like you can drop Leech, you can drop Lifesteal Gear and rely on her heal, her passive, and another champion's heal, like for example a Narma, for example a Brogni. Them together, they will be healing your team pretty much enough in order to survive a decent amount of time. Sandlashed Survivor, on the other hand, I would run her for ally protection, especially on a double ally protection. I feel like she'll be doing an amazing job. So kind of that's the difference in between them. Rely more on heals, a revive from here. With the other one, rely on ally protection and things like that. For clan boss, of course, for arena, they both have different utilities. She's not as great on a go second team as Sandlashed Survivor. I feel like Sandlashed Survivor has better utility because of her passive, the ally protection, keeping the team alive, while this one kind of lets the team die and she's gonna come in with the passive, you know. But awesome champion. Next one, Deacon Armstrong, guys. Very unique champion, very powerful champion. You can use him on a 2-to-1 ratio clan boss team to replace Seeker. Yes, you do need higher speeds, but you can make a use of his speed lead. Increases ally speed in all battles by 19%. I haven't made the team on my channel, but that's something that I'll probably do this week or next week, just to show you guys how to make a 2-to-1 ratio with Deacon Armstrong. His A3 fills the turn meter of all allies by 15% and decreases the turn meter of all enemies by 15%. Grants an extra turn on a 3-turn cooldown. That's what makes him so unique. That's what allows you to make a 2-to-1 ratio team with a champion like this. Boost the turn meter, grants an extra turn. If you will not grant an extra turn, you will not be able to make that 2-to-1 ratio team. Same with Seeker. That's why these two are the only champions that can replace their role in a BlueStacks comp, in a 2-to-1 ratio team that relies on turn meter boost. They are unique. There are no other champions to do it. A2 attacks all enemies, 100% chance to place decreased defense debuff for 2 turns. So he actually brings you defense down as well. That allowing you to kind of make a different sort of clan boss, rather than to use a Dracomorph in there. You can bring different champions because you already have defense down. And of course, this is not only for clan boss, guys. It's good for arena, it's good for dungeons, good for Doom Tower, good for faction wars. Defense down, booster meter, decrease meter, speed aura for everything, and the A1 attacks one enemy 2 times. Each hit has a 50% chance to place a leech. That means that if you run him on clan boss, right, on an unkillable team, you're gonna take damage, but you're not gonna have lifesteal to come in and counter attack from masteries on most of your champions. So you're gonna have leech debuff, which will heal all your champions, and then all your team is gonna have a 50% chance to counter attack whenever they lose a certain amount of HP to the boss. That's another great thing from Deacon Armstrong. Now, moving over to the next champions on the list. Let's have a look at the Dark Elves, guys. They have a lot of epics in here, but how many of them are actually wow, right? How many of them are we're still gonna use in endgame? So we have Captain Temila, decent increased defense, heals. We got a bit of ally protection from here, but nothing special with that champion. She definitely got power creeped since day one when she came out. Kaden, attack down, revive, provoke on the A1. Pretty good for faction wars. He's not that great for Magma Dragon because the chance of landing provoke from here is pretty low. So I wouldn't call him an amazing champion for anything else rather than faction wars. And of course, early on, if you pull him, you don't have revivers, etc. He can do a pretty good job, 100%. Spider, the only epic that has weaken and defense down in the entire game, AoE. I might be wrong on that one. Correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe we got a new one since then and I forgot. Luria, she's pretty good, but she's not like wow. You know what I mean? She's great early on mid game to beat your faction wars, attacks all enemies. 75% chance to land the freeze debuff for 1/3. Enemies killed by this skill cannot be revived. Her A1 attacks one enemy. 75% chance to land defense down or heal reduction or decrease speed for 2 turns. And the A3 attacks one enemy, removes all buffs, also 100% chance to place block buffs debuff for 2 turns. She's not great against the magic keep because it's the wrong affinity to use this skill, and overall she doesn't hit as hard to block many revives, but she's a great CC champion for faction wars, and of course if you have no one else better, to run her in dungeons a bit in arena maybe, but her base stats are not wow, you know? So I don't feel like I would recommend you to invest in Luria 100% with no regrets unless you need her for faction wars. Kind of the same with Crimson Helm. I tried to do some crazy stuff with her recently and it didn't really work that much. We have revive on that, increased defense, we have 4 times at random provoke and she has a block damage, attack down on the A1, which is pretty good, don't get me wrong. And we have a HP aura for all dungeons. She has crazy high base defense, right, for a defense epic champion, 1.5k. Her base speed is pretty low. Back in the day, people used to make like revive on that teams with Crimson Helm, and she was fairly decent at that point. Now, the next champions that I want to talk about, Fang Cleric is kind of like meh, since Kaden is out. Lua. Awesome champion, right? Hits pretty hard, attacks one enemy, deals 50% of the damage inflicted to all enemies if this attack is critical. So she's gonna deal a bit of damage to all the enemy team. Her A2 attacks all enemies 3 times. Each critical hit heals this champion by 2.5% HP. The heal is not powerful, but attacking the enemy team AoE 3 times can be pretty good. And she has a very high base attack for an epic champion. Almost 1.6k attack, 97 speed. And her A3 attacks one enemy, decreases the target's turn meter by 100%, will ignore shield and block damage buffs. This right here makes her good as a turn meter manipulation champion, and just in general a champion that can deal pure damage, right? So Lua is definitely not a bad champion to invest in. Psyler, very unique, full AoE champion. We have increases ally speed in faction creeps by 22%. Pretty good base stats, pretty good speed. Her A1 AoE attacks all enemies. Her A2 AoE attacks all enemies. 100% chance to decrease accuracy for 2 turns. A3 places a 30% decrease speed debuff on all enemies for 2 turns. Decreases the turn meter of all enemies by 40%. Now this champion right here, I would definitely run her on a stun set. If I want to use her for arena, run her fast on immunity or anything like that. Just speed gear, accuracy gear, and make her use the A3 to kind of catch the enemy off guard a bit. But again, she's an awesome champion. Looks great, right? You cannot deny that. And AoE attacks are always good. I'm sure that now with the AI fixture, if you lock her skill right here, she should be able to farm campaign with these skills, with the damage she deals. And the next one from this faction, Madame Series. We all know her, we all love her, and some of you hate her because of arena, guys. Great base stats on this champion. Her A3 removes all buffs from all enemies, places an attack down and defense down on all enemies for 2 turns. The only champion in the entire game that has a skill like this. Midnight Ritual, a very powerful skill for arena. Her passive places a shield buff on this champion equal to 10% of their max HP at the start of each turn. When attacked while under a shield buff, has a 35% chance to place a fear debuff on the attacker for 1 turn. Man, she is such a pain in arena, especially if the enemy team is much faster than you. Right now with the AI fixture, she's always using the A3. It's very hard to counter it. Almost feels like broken. Her A2 attacks all enemies, has a 50% chance of stealing 1 random buff from each target, places a block debuffs buff on all allies for 2 turns if any buff is stolen, places a true fear debuff for 1 turn on enemies who have buffs stolen. This right here is pretty good to give you a bit of immunity, still a buff from the enemy team, but it's not happening as often. Her A1 attacks 1 enemy, 20% chance to place Fear debuff for 1 turn. The chance increases to 30 or 45 if the target is under 1 or 2 more debuffs. So overall, Madame series, I have 2 of them built at 60. One of them full accuracy, 700 plus accuracy. One of them immunity almost at 700 accuracy. That's kind of like what I would suggest you to. You can make a fast one, 200 plus speed, make sure it cuts the enemy team before the nuker goes, put attack down on the enemy, and then you'll be able to kind of survive the impact of the nuker. Great strat as well to make a pretty fast one, lower accuracy as fast as you can, on speed gear, on accuracy with speed gear. Plenty of combinations in this set, speed, perception, immunity, accuracy, kind of like those are the main sets I would suggest you to use on a Madame series. She is not as great for dungeons because of the long cooldowns, 4-turn cooldown rather than a 3-turn cooldown from a Stag Knight or a Duck the Pierce or something like that, Tyrell, for that defense down. But if you want attack down and defense down AoE, on 4-turn cooldown is still better than nothing at all. Moving over to the next faction, I feel like we should start talking a bit about the Ogryn tribes, right? We do have a couple of pretty good champions in here as well. Now, just to give a quick shout out, Claude, increased accuracy, increased speed, shield, a pretty great champion. Skullcrusher, counter attack, very unique. So the thing with Skullcrusher, guys, if you get him early on, mid game, you don't have the right gear, he's not gonna improve much your clan boss team unless you really have bad champions, because he places this ally protection, counter attack, unkillable on him, but on the second hit, when he's gonna get that second AoE from clan boss, when you're not gonna have unkillable on him, he's gonna die so quick on clan boss because he's soaking up the damage from all your team. His base defense is not out of the ordinary. Yes, he is amazing because we have counter attack on him and there's no other epic that does that. So he owns his spot in the top. Definitely worth it to 6-star him, you know. Great on lifesteal gear. Probably the best build on him will be on Stalwart. If you have some champions to sustain your team, to give them HP. A Leech champion. Talking about Leech, maybe you want to use him with a Grush. Great champion, hits super hard, attacks one enemy, 75% chance to land Leech from the A1, decrease attack or decrease crit damage from the A2 AoE, and the A3 attacks all enemies, continuous heal, buff on all the champions for 2 turns, or an additional 7.5 buff on all allies for 1 turn if at least one enemy is hit with a critical hit. Passive is for faction creeps, but he has pretty good base stats. So yeah, pair Leech, Skullcrusher on Stalwart, tanky, and they're gonna survive much better. Shatterbones again is not a bad champion to give a shout out for his unique ability of controlling the Termiter on so many champions. Occult Brawler being one of the best poisoners in the game, definitely a great champion, but again, that depends what other champions you have in your team. Next one on the list is Uugo, guys. She is a very unique champion, honestly. Her A2 attacks all enemies, 100% chance to place defense down for 2 turns. Also, a 75% fully booked to place a block debuff for 2 turns. The chance of placing it increases by 5% for each alive enemies. With the right masteries, you get her to 100% for arena as well. A3 removes all heal reduction debuffs from all allies, then removes 1 random debuff from all allies, then heals all allies by 20% of this champion's max HP. If all allies are dead, revives them with 50% HP, then fills their Termiter by 50% instead. This is a bit more situational for her to be left alive alone and in order to revive the rest, but it can happen. Passive places a 30% increased speed buff and a block damage buff on this champion for 1 turn whenever this champion last living allies is killed. That's kind of how it goes hand in hand with the A3. And the A1 attacks one enemy, has a 35% chance of placing a Leech debuff for 2 turns. The chance increases by 5 for each alive enemy. So basically 40% chance to do that on the clan boss if you have no better option, you know. Overall, Uugo is a pretty good champion, pretty good base stats. Definitely a good replacement for arena if you don't have a Madame series and you're not going against teams that they have shield. One thing to keep in mind, she can be great for to counter Sandlashed survivors, great to counter Godseeker Aniri, great to counter Seekers in arena, as long as she doesn't hit crits. especially for a Seeker. If she hits crits with this skill right here, Seeker is gonna proc the defense up, and only then she's gonna place block buffs. So you have to keep that in mind as well. But love Uugo, I have one at 60 as well. I haven't used her in quite a while, but she's still a pretty good champion. And that's it with this faction. Nothing else worth to mention. I'm just messing with you guys. Of course, we have the ManEater. Everybody loves the ManEater for clan boss. Kind of changes your team, changes your life when you're talking about clan boss. He's good for the Ice Golem. I use him in the Fire Knight. Great for the Spider. Great for Arena in some of the lower tiers, depending what exactly you're planning to do with him and how decent is your gear. Unkillable block debuffs on the A3. Depletes the turn meter on a single target on the A1. And attack down for 1 turn on the A1 if the attack is critical. 100% chance to do it. Pretty good base stats. Increases ally HP in dungeons by 33%. The champion is HP based, but the damage is based on attack. So he works great on unkillable teams, you already know that. Mainly if you have a Seeker, you have a Krela to boost their attack up, they're gonna deal tons and tons of damage as well. This skill right here is great for bosses, for the dungeons. So overall, yeah, we all know ManEater. I don't think I need to tell you much about ManEater, right? Brundar, he needs more books than a whole library, so I'm not even gonna mention him just because of that simple fact. Grimskin, Cagebreaker, Gelcut, Grunge, meh. Honestly, I don't feel like it's worth it to be a proud owner of any of those champions in there. But from the Skinwalkers, guys, Taurus, pretty decent champion, right? We have the new Hippo right here. Hope for Rest, great for Faction Wars, the only reviver for this faction. Steel Skull, decent, great for Faction Wars as well. Fayne, amazing for unkillable teams, defense down, weaken, poisons, and more hits from the A1. She deals pretty good damage. Her base stats are not as amazing. That's why she's kind of better for unkillable teams. You can use her defense down, weaken on dungeons as well, like on the Spider, for example, on some of the bosses. But that's kind of where it ends with Fayne. So yeah, if you have no one else better than Fayne, definitely 6-star her for clan boss, you won't regret it. But on high defense teams, she's kind of gonna struggle a bit because of her base stats. From the Lizardmen, we have Jareg, we have Aox, we have Quarkan, we have Skethis. Pretty good champions, right? But I would not stress too much with some of them. The only 2 epic champions from here that I would really level up and use if I wouldn't need them for Faction Wars. So early on I needed Broadman for Faction Wars. I would still give him props for Faction Wars. You can fuse him for free as well. A pretty easy fusion. Go and get him. He's gonna carry your ass in Faction Wars 100%. But if you're talking all around, right? Because this video is not for only one specific area, guys. It's all around the game. Jareg right here. Attack down on the A1. We have ally protection and defense down on the A2 on a 4-turn cooldown. Continuous heal on his passive whenever an ally loses 20% of their max HP in one hit. And increases ally HP in all battles by 33%. Now this champion is a HP based champion, damage based on attack. His base stats are pretty good. You can run him on a shield set if you want for dungeons, etc. For clan boss, I would probably suggest you a stalwart gear just because his base defense is not that high, so it's gonna be pretty hard to tank the champion enough, you know. Stalwart will be a pretty good option for the champion right here. Skethis, new champion, A1 decrease speed, single target. A2 attacks all enemies, 100% chance to steal 1 random buff from each enemy. So that's pretty good. Is a void affinity as well, so he's definitely gonna steal 1 buff from everyone as long as he's not gonna get resisted. But his A3 on a 4-turn cooldown removes all debuffs from all allies, then places a block debuffs buff and a shield buff on all allies for 2 turns. The shield buff is equal to 20% of this champion's max HP. Passive places a block damage buff on this champion for 1 turn whenever their HP drops below 30. And increases ally resistance in all battles by 40. 18,000 HP, decent speed, decent amount of defense. But this champion right here is at the same level with Sky Touch Shaman. This one brings us shield, Sky Touch Shaman brings us heal. I would say it's better to run this champion over Skytouch Shaman just for the simple fact that his passive or her passive, whatever this champion is not gonna screw over with the champion. So it's nothing dangerous here like fear or decreased speed from its passive. So that's why Skethis, I feel like it might be the better replacement or Skytouch Shaman, honestly. Definitely worth it to 6-star the champion if you have it and you're in the need of a cleanser. The rest, Jareg, Basilisk, Drake, Chizo, Quarkan, they're decent. He's decent for faction wars as well, but we just got a much better version. We got Skethis, who kind of leaves him behind. But if you need for faction wars, yeah, 6-star them. How I said, we're not focusing on faction war champions in this video, guys. Now, the next champions that we should point out from here, we do have the Demonspawns, right? Pretty good champions in here as well. We have Padma, we have Akak, we have Allure, we have Nazana, pretty good. We have Infernal Baroness, decent. Tainix, decent for faction wars. Akot, decent for Spider. He's kind of a bit of a wonky champion. But Umbral Enchantress, guys. Very powerful champion. I just love Umbral Enchantress. Block, buffs, debuff for 3 turns on the A2 on a 3-turn cooldown. And one of the most powerful provoke skills in the entire game. AoE, 100% chance to land provoke for 2 turns on all the enemies, guys. On an epic champion. What else you want from her? Give her a regeneration set. Anything that brings her back her HP, she's gonna survive without a problem. Give you provoke, give you block, buffs, debuff on the enemy team, and just overall being an awesome champion. Definitely zero regrets. She is such a powerful champion for arena, faction wars, dungeons, just generally an amazing champion. Doom Tower on the waves. Padma, great attack down. Pretty good damage from the A2, decreases accuracy AoE here, and the A3 the A3 attacks one enemy, removes all buffs from the target and places them on this champion. The A1 attacks one enemy 2 times. If this attack is critical, 100% chance to land attack down on all enemies for 2 turns. I'm running her in the Doom Tower on the Eternal Dragon, and Faction Wars, she deals pretty good damage as well. Allure, amazing for the Fire Knight, I don't have to say it. Great for Faction Wars, attacks 3 times at random, decreases the target's turn meter by 25 on each critical hit. AoE 2 times, each hit has a 30% chance to land 30% defense down, so the small version of defense down. Places a sleep debuff for 1 turn on targets under decreased defense debuffs. Accuracy aura for faction crypts, and attacks one enemy, has an extra 30% chance of inflicting a critical hit, will ignore 50% of the target's defense. Pretty good base stats, pretty good attack, almost 1.6k. She can deal pretty good damage with this because she ignores 50% of the target's defense. And Akak the Vandaren is great for his free skill, right? Is great for the spider, and you can use him as a CC in other parts in the game as well. His A1 attacks one enemy, 50% chance to decrease the duration of one random buff if the target is under HP burn. Also, 30% chance of decreasing the target's turn meter by 15 if they are under a freeze debuff. A2 places block debuffs and a strengthen on all allies for 1 turn and 2 turns respectively with each buff. The A3 attacks all enemies, 90% chance to place freeze debuff for 1 turn on enemies whose attack is higher than their defense. 90% chance of placing a HP burn debuff for 1 turn on enemies whose defense is equal to or higher than their attack. Basically, the support champions, you're gonna land HP burn on them, the tankier ones, and the attack champions, you're gonna freeze them to make sure they're not gonna wreck your team. Passive, heals all allies by 5% of their max HP every time an enemy under a HP burn debuff gets a turn. Fills the turn meter of all allies by 10% every time an enemy under a freeze debuff gets a turn. I am using Akak in the Spider at the moment together with Tyrant. Pretty good combo, makes the run a bit faster because the freeze and the animations, how they work on the Spider, guys. Awesome champion, honestly, I really like Akak. Moving over to Undead Hordes, we have so many epic champions in here, right? Seeker, super unique champion because of the passive. Dark Elhain is pretty good. We have a Husk, pretty good again. Catacomb Counselor, decent champion. Gorgorab again, pretty good champion. Anax, pretty good as well. Now, I'm not gonna go through every single one of them, guys. My ultimate champion from here is Ursala Mage. 30% chance to land decreased speed debuff for 2 turns on the A1. Places an increased crit rate, increased defense, and a block debuffs buff on all allies for 1 turn and 2 turns on the other buffs. On a 3-turn cooldown, great with Seer, we already know it. Very popular champion, Ursala Mage. A3 removes all debuffs from all allies, then heals all allies by 10% of this champion's max HP. Heals each ally by a further 10 if 1 or more debuffs are removed from that ally. Fills each ally's turn meter by 15 if 2 or more debuffs are removed from that ally. Not very likely to remove more than 2, especially for Arena. For Doom Tower, maybe if a lot of CC champions are on the enemy team. Pretty good base stats, especially on speed. And yeah, I would probably run him on immunity for Arena just to make sure we cleanse. And then we can come in with this skill right here, or very high resistance. It's not gonna work against CC sets, against stun, provoke, sleep. Those ones, they can land the debuff without accuracy, so you can have a million resistance. Those sets, they still gonna apply the debuff as long as the chance procs. Ursala Mage, Gorgorab, one of my biggest carries in the game. Increases ally speed in arena battles by 23. His base speed is not as good, but he's still doing a pretty good job, right? Fills the turn meter of all allies by 15%, places a 50% increased attack on all allies for 2 turns, and revives any dead allies with 25% HP, then heals all allies by 25, attacks one enemy, 50% chance of removing 1 random buff. Great for faction wars, great for arena if you haven't unlocked your arbiter yet, great for Doom Tower if you don't have any revivers, great for dungeons. He honestly carried me in so many places in the game, I don't have words to describe it. Gorgorab, awesome, awesome champion. Vogot kind of got a ghost nerf, to say like this. He heals only after the damage is taken now, so he's not as great anymore. Moving over to the next champions from the Night Revenants, we have Miscreated Monster, Sinesha, Doompriest, Sepulcher Sentinel, Rector Dread, Skullcrown, Faceless, Golden Reaper and Whisper, and Pestilence, again, pretty good to increase accuracy. But the main champions from this faction, guys, Miscreated Monster, Sepulcher Sentinel, crazy good champions. We all know these champions, but I just want to point it out. Miscreated Monster, even in the endgame where I am, I still find like he's a very powerful champion because of the A2 right here. Super powerful skill. Stun, shield, AoE hits, right? Pretty good damage. Ally protection in here, a bit of heal. CC, passive. Whenever we get attacked, and he has ally protection on the champions, whoever gets attacked, doesn't really matter. He's gonna land a fear on the attacker. On the A1 we have a stun, and then if we land the stun, we have a defense down as well. Pretty good base stats on the champion overall. You wanna have full crit rate, as much crit damage and HP as possibly on this champion to deal more damage, to have a bigger shield overall. Great for Spider, Faction Wars, Doom Tower, even for Arena, for the lower tiers. Not great for Clan Boss. Sepulcher Sentinel, one of the best attack down champions in the entire game. Attack down on the A1, defense up, and block debuffs on a 4-turn cooldown on the A2. Better to run her on a 4-to-3 ratio for Clan Boss. Her passive, 50% chance to completely block incoming damage when an ally is attacked. That's pretty good, man. Very unique. No other champion has this. So she's following the positioning. She starts with the lead, position 1, 2, 3, 4. But mainly it's just gonna go on the lead and position 1. So put your champion that you want her to protect in there. Maybe a Skullcrusher, for example. She's gonna have a chance to protect Skullcrusher to soak up some of that damage if you're using her as lead. Pretty good base stats. We made lots of different Clan Boss teams with Sepulcher. Skullcrown Sinesha, no need to say, amazing for Blender, amazing for damage, amazing for CC if you run them on stun sets. Love the sisters, honestly. Crazy good champions. Rector Dread, good for the Doom Tower. She only revives 1 champion, so you could survive without a Rector Dread on your account, honestly. You can run her for Arena endgame stall defense teams because of her being stronger affinity towards most of the magic nukers out there. Again, she's not that game-changing. She's still a decent champion to consider to level up. Dwarves, Melga, great for faction wars. She can be a decent carry for some of the dungeons, but not as much. Revive, and a shield, continuous heal, so that's kind of her thing. Revives 2 allies, 20% HP, turn meter, and places a shield. Then here we have places a shield buff on all allies equal to 20% of this champion's max HP, and a continuous heal buff on all allies for 2 turns. Increases ally HP in all battles by 15%, and the A1 attacks one enemy, nothing out of the ordinary. Pretty good HP on the champion. Geomancer, pretty broken with the passive. Deals a bit of damage in clan boss, but he doesn't stand out like out of the ordinary to be like, wow, I really want to 6-star that champion, is gonna change my account. Rearguard Sergeant, Grizzle Jarl, good for faction wars, good for clan boss, ally protection, defense down, attack down on a 3-turn cooldown. We have a defense up, block debuffs from a Grizzle Jarl. I kind of like her attack down from here, AoE, then we have ally protection and defense down from here. She is super important for faction wars as well, guys. Gala Longblade deals tons and tons of damage. She wrecks 2 tanks in one go. The Swift Parry kind of puts her back, but if you're in the lower tiers in her arena, you want her for damage in dungeons, Doom Tower, she's definitely a great champion to go to. In the Shadowkin, we have Sachi, we have Chani, we have Toragi, Oboro, Gori, and Jimbo. I kind of like, my favorite out of this, sorry, is Jimbo. Very unique champion, great for arena. Now, he doesn't have the craziest multipliers to work against some of the very tanky champions in the game, but he can still run against that most of these teams, guys. So, Jimbo, a great champion to deal with Swift Parry meta. But that was all for this video, guys. I honestly didn't thought that this is gonna take me so long. I'm out of breath. Do let me know in the comments down below if I missed any of the champions. I do apologize. I kind of tried to focus on the main champions that I would suggest you to invest in, even if you're endgame, and you will have zero regrets for investing in the champions. You'll still play them in the endgame, you'll have use for those champions. That's kind of on what we focused on this video. I do appreciate all of you guys watching. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to thumbs up, subscribe for more content, turn on notifications to see when we upload next, and I'll see you all soon on another video. Till then, peace out.